All right, who's ready for the last ale bath of 2025? Let's do it again because you might not have been ready for that one. 3, 2, 1, ale bath! Everybody have a good 2025? It was an all right year. I got to see a capybara for the first time. That was probably the highlight. That was probably the number one highlight of 2025. Got to see a capybara. Yeah, all right. Anyway, this chapter does have a requirement, though. In order to watch this video about Chapter 1170, you need to have a hammer. So go out there and grab a hammer. Doesn't matter what kind of hammer it is. You could even just take a piece of, Post-it note and just draw a hammer. But you gotta have a hammer. Also, if you don't have a hammer, slight substitute option if you have a pet squirrel. All will be made apparent as we go into this chapter. All right, everybody good? You got your hammer and or squirrel. All right, let's do this. One Piece Chapter 1170 review titled Contradictions. What did I mean by hammer or squirrel? Was that a contradiction? I don't know. I guess we'll check it out. All right. Cover page. We got... This is a cute one. This is a nice cover page this week. It's a cover request. We have Jinbei working at a train station. Not really a train so much as it's like an eel. It's an eel train, okay? So Jinbei's working at the train station selling bento boxes to the Straw Hats. But the Straw Hats are all children running around, except for Robin, who is the mother, which is fantastic because this is something Oda talked about in SBS a long time ago. People ask questions like, if the Straw Hats were like an actual family, which they are, but if they were an actual family, like, what role would they have in the family? And Oda explained, well, Robin would be the mom, Nami would be the daughter, the eldest sons would be like Sanji and Zoro, and then Luffy, and then Chopper would be the youngest son. Originally, before Jinbei joined, Brook was the grandfather, Frankie was the dad. But I think it even just didn't make sense back then, but there was like nobody else. So then after Jinbei joined, Oda amended that so that Jinbei is now the dad, and I think Frankie was listed as the perverted granny or something like that. So that's kind of nice. That's sort of a reference there. Although we don't see Frankie actually in this one. We just see Robin buying the bentos for her kids. And we see Luffy, Chopper, Nami, Usopp, Zoro, Sanji. This is also a reference to, I didn't get to ride the bullet trains, the Shinkansens, when I was in Japan. But when I go back, I think we're going to go and try them out. But when you get on a Shinkansen, it's a long ride usually. It's a few hours. You can buy special like bento boxes, like meals that are only available for like that train like trip or that particular line or something like that, right? And it's actually, some of them are kind of highly prized because some of them are like really gourmet stuff that you only can get on this one train or this one route, okay? So that's the reference there. So that was pretty cool. I like that cover page. All right, so we're picking it up where we left off. Loki has to go kill his dad. It's a sucky thing to do, but sometimes life just hands you a bowl of lemons and you gotta make lemonade out of this shit, alright? So he's like, Loki, my son, go into the treasure vault and find the legendary devil fruit, eat it, and then end my pitiful existence. And Loki, he has some words with his dad, and then his dad gets taken over, brainwashed by Emu, and then is like, Loki, my son, I will kill you and I will take the devil fruit and Ragnir for myself. So Loki's getting a lot of contradictions. Hey, there it is. There's title drop. All right. So he heads off for the treasure room. Really quick, I went back and I was just curious if it lined up. So when Luffy and Nami and Zoro and Gabon went into the treasure chamber, remember way back at this point, way back earlier in 2025, when they found the key to Loki's chains and Gabon fought against Luffy and Zoro very briefly, the entrance to that chamber was behind the throne, and I don't think that's where Loki is right now. I think it's like a separate room in the castle, which is weird, though. You would assume the legendary devil fruit would be kept in the chamber directly behind the throne, but I seem to remember in the last chapter Loki like ran down a hallway, like he didn't run behind the throne to find that secret passage. Maybe there was another way there. At any rate, he goes into this big chamber, he opens up this room that's all bolted and locked with chains, and in there, sure enough, is a treasure chest which apparently has this legendary devil fruit. but behind it is the mighty hammer Ragnir. And the chapter ended with Ragnir flinging itself at Loki. Loki, like, ducked out of the way. He's like, whoa! And he dodged it. And now we're picking up right where we left off, where Loki hits the ground. Ragnir slams into a pillar right behind him, just completely obliterates it. Loki gets back up, not even looking at the hammer, because, you know, any reasonable person at this point would be like, the hammer is magical and has levitated under its own sentience and attacked me to defend the devil fruit. So yeah, I don't know if that's how you would arrive at that conclusion, but that's not how Loki sees it. Loki's like, bastard, somebody's throwing hammers in there. Who's throwing hammers at me? That's not, is it a hammer brother? Oh, we have a bone to pick with the Hammer brothers. Let's go, you know? And so he just takes his own hammer and charges into the darkness, charges into the dark room, trying to find out if there's somebody in there that just yeeted Ragnir at him, right? So he's like, get out of there! I gotta eat this devil fruit and kill my dad! This is a weird day for Loki. You know, anyway, he walks into the room and there's nobody. There's just the treasure chest on the ground, the sealed treasure chest. It's not a very big room to begin with. And so he's looking around and he's just like, there's gotta be someone in here. Someone prowling around here. You know, no, he doesn't see anybody. So he's like, okay, whatever. I don't know what the hell that was about. I don't know how Ragnir just flung at me, but I gotta eat this devil fruit really quick, right? So he goes to get the devil fruit. Meanwhile, he starts hearing sounds behind him, and so he looks behind him, and he starts seeing Ragnir just, like, crush the ground beneath it. Like, it slammed into the pillar, hit the ground, and the sheer weight of the hammer began to, like, crack apart the very floor of the chamber they were in, right? And so Loki's just like, whoa, this is ridiculous. There's no way that hammer is that heavy. It wasn't forged in the fires of a dying star or something, right? And so the hammer begins to just completely destroy the room. Loki's still, he's like jumping on the rubble as it's falling, like, man, this castle is crap. Dad really needs to hire a better architect or something. This thing is falling apart. Like, he just doesn't get it yet that the hammer is sentient. It is kind of funny. It is a little bit of a Looney Tunes routine, I gotta be honest with you, but it's really funny, right? What's even funnier is just like the whole situation on why Loki is here right now is so serious. His father, the king of Elbath, has been brainwashed by the evil shadow lord of the entire world and is forced to cut down all of his own men, stabbed Elder Jarl in the face. He's ordered his own son. He had this tearful moment with his son of like, Loki, please tell the country that I failed. You need to be the king. You need to be the one to finish me off. You're the only one that can do it, son, please. Like tears streaming down his eyes. And Loki's like, all right, Dad, I'll go do it. And now it's just like, it's just like boing. It's like, oh man, what's going on here? This is crazy. Who's throwing hammers at me? This is ridiculous. All right, so we cut back over to Harald, right? And Harald has cut down even more of his guards. And remember, Harald is still himself. Like, he still remembers who he is. It's not like he's a complete, like, brainwashed zombie of Emu. But he's just like, Loki, you won't be able to eat that devil fruit. In fact, that devil fruit has been there for generations, and there's a reason why no other kings have eaten that fruit. It's not because they didn't want to, it's because they couldn't. Because Ragnir chooses the one that can eat the devil fruit, and not a single one of the kings that came before were worthy enough in the hammer's eyes. I get hammers have eyes, I guess. So that's the explanation, right? Ragnir has been placed next to that treasure chest. Who originally placed Ragnir there? Who originally placed the treasure chest there, and who set this whole thing up? Maybe the giant king that lived back in the Void Century, I would assume. Maybe the last one that had the ability to wield this devil fruit. From what we're going to see in this chapter, it seems to be a Zoan, which probably a mythical zone, I would assume, which means they do have the level of, like, awareness to, like, go where they need to be, right? Like, Luffy's Hito no Mi model sun god Nika avoided Cypher Pool 9 and the government and went with Shanks. It seemed to have, like, some level of, like, ability to elude ones that it doesn't want to be consumed by, okay? So it might be some situation like that where the giant king that lived all the way back during the Void Century that was allied with Joy Boy and everything like that, died, died, and that fruit was reincarnated and stayed here on Elbaf in the treasure chest, and Ragnir was the guard. Ragnir might have been the weapon of that ancient giant king. And that ancient giant king, by the way, has never been mentioned, unless we're talking about the Galila giants. We're talking about the Galleria giants, maybe. That has a connection there in some way. But yeah, there would have been a giant, you know, back in the days of the Void Century that did ally with Joy Boy, just we don't know anything about that individual, right? So maybe they're the ones that set all this up? Not really sure. Or maybe Ragnir itself has been, like, around for that long, and just because it's a hammer. That is an interesting question, because objects can consume devil fruits, but do they just live as long as, because objects don't have, like, you know, I mean, eventually they'll decay and rot away, most of them will, but like Lasso is a gun that ate a dog Zoan. You know, that dog does it have a lifespan of a dog, or does it just live, you know, until the gun is destroyed? You know, that's a question there. Anyway, Harald is cutting everybody down. Now remember, he lost his sword because he embedded it inside of Jarl's head, and it still remains there to this day. So Harald just starts picking up like an axe and a sword and a spear, just like all the weapons laying about on the floor, and is just like hacking apart everybody, right? And he's charging for the treasure room because he's saying that with my current strength, I will be the one. I will be the first one to tame Ragnir and get the powers of that devil fruit. So Ragnir is not, like, because a lot of people were thinking, I threw out the idea as well, you know, is the devil fruit even a thing? Or is it like the powers of Ragnir that's the true devil fruit ability, right? Like, you know, maybe the chest is empty and Ragnir is just the one that will choose the master because Ragnir is able to, like, summon lightning and stuff. Was that the power of the hammer, or was that the power of the devil fruit, or both? You know, how exactly does this go down? So Harald starts making it for the treasure vault. At that exact moment, Shanks and Gabon spring into action, and they slice apart Harald's leg. He loses his right leg. It just gets hacked off, right? And so Harald's like, ugh! And then Gabon explains how to harm the God's Knights. He goes into a little tutorial here on how this works. And it involves Conqueror's Hockey, but not only that, it involves a lot of Conqueror's Hockey, all right? We kind of already saw this with Garp and Roger when they fought against Rocks at God Valley, but we get a little bit more of a detailed explanation here, right? So the first off thing Gabon says is like, okay, look, we can hack them apart. They could still feel pain, right, if you coat them in Conqueror's Hockey. I'm assuming if you don't use Conqueror's Hockey, they don't feel any pain. Remember Usopp, you know, used his skull bomb grass on Gunko and blew like half of her body apart, and she just reformed. She didn't look like she was in any pain from that, all right? Now, if Usopp would have added his Conqueror's Hockey, which he does have, his God Conqueror's Hockey on top of that attack, which Usopp was merciful. Let's be honest here. He didn't want to harm her too much. Usopp's Conqueror's Hockey will just banish her to a different dimension, right? He didn't want to go that far with it, right? But if you use Conqueror's Hockey and slice them up, they're gonna feel the pain from that, so there's gonna be an effect there. And while, yes, they are still able to heal, because we've seen this before, you know, with Gabon cutting off Summers' arm, even though it was severed with Conqueror's Hockey, it was able to reform. It happened also when Rocks fought against Garling at God Valley. It just took a little longer to reform, but it did happen. And so he mentions that folks like him are weak to Conqueror's Hockey coating. We basically just got to keep charging up our attacks with Conquerors, slamming into them as much as possible. They're going to feel the pain. It's going to begin to build and build and build. They're going to get worn down. They're going to get backed into a corner, and I guess they're going to retreat or give up or something like that, right? And so I guess the idea is if it takes longer for them to reform, if you're using Conquerors, if you're quick enough and you just keep hacking them apart, like cut off both of their legs, both of their arms, and their head, and you just keep raining blows down on them, they're not going to be able to reform, and they're effectively useless in a fight. Like, you have won the fight with the God's Knight at that point. Now, later on, Gabon mentions that he never actually fought against somebody that has these powers that also, in turn, has Conqueror's Hockey. So that throws a little bit of a wrench in the plan. But overall, that's how you fight against a God's Knight. Harald is like, how dare you oppose me? Bam! And he, like, begins to crush them and tries to attack. They're dodging out of the way. Shanks is like, hey, Gabon, Gabon, you're pretty familiar with fighting these guys, huh? And Gabon's like, oh yeah, Shanks. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, these assholes used to come down to, you know, the Oro Jackson and try to kidnap you all the damn time. I mean, I guess technically we're the ones that kidnapped you from God Valley, but whatever, they were dicks, so we didn't want to give them to you. All right, you know, we didn't want to give you to them, right? So we do get a flashback where, remember, okay, Shanks was a member of Roger's crew from the time he was 1 year old all the way up to when he was like 14 or 15 when the Roger Pirates disbanded, right? So, and also, he looks exactly like Shamrock, right? And so Shamrock knew that he had twins, all right? The mother of Shanks and Shamrock, whose name we still don't know, presented Shamrock and Shanks to Garling. He's like, oh, I have 2 sons, all right? And then after God Valley, he only has 1 son. So he's like, wait a minute. Didn't I have 2 of these? And so they started probably looking for him, and it didn't take very long before they started finding, hey, there's a kid on the Roger Pirates, this really notorious pirate crew that was present to God Valley, that looks exactly like Shamrock, Garling's son, right? And so they started sending God's Knights after them in order to bring Shanks back to the Holy Land, and every single time the Roger Pirates fought back and defended Shanks. That is awesome. That is so cool. It also explains where Gabon fought against Summers. That did not happen at God Valley. It happened later. It was off screen. Shanks does mention that, like, oh yeah, when I was in the Holy Land, that Summers guy did mention he fought you. And I wonder how that conversation went. It's just like, Shanks, good to have you in the Holy Land, finally. Man, I can't tell you how many times I got my ass kicked by Roger and his crew when we went to go get you back. So finally you got back. Although, I bet that must be a little annoying for Summers because he was probably given... I would love it for, like, Summers to have been, like, the main guy. Like, they sent Summers after Shanks, like, 17 times or something like that. They're just like, oh, sorry, Summers, it didn't work this time. He's like, oh... okay, well, I guess maybe you could send somebody else. Nah, everybody else is busy. You gotta go back and get him again. It's just like, man, I've been doing this. I'm like a Saturday morning cartoon villain at this point. I'm like Skeletor. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Go back and get him, right? And he just gets his ass kicked every single time. Week after week. That would be great. That would be fantastic, right? But yeah, Gabon is just like, yeah, we sent them packing again and again. Just gotta keep hitting them with conquerors really, really hard, and they eventually give up and go away. We've been through this song and dance before. He even starts reminiscing. He's like, those were the good old days. It's like, all right. Now, he also does bring up, it's rather surprising that there was even a fighting force like this at Marijois. I know, right? Go figure. We didn't even know the God's Knight existed until like a couple of years ago. Gabon brings that up. He's like, most of the Celestial Dragons are completely useless. They're lazy. They have no battle powers whatsoever. They just sit in their big holy city in abject luxury, shitting in their golden toilets, eating in their golden dining rooms on their golden plates, probably eating gold themselves. I don't know. And they just don't do anything, right? They don't really deal with the lower realm all too much. Occasionally they'll come down to like Sabaody to the auction house and things, but usually they stay up there. So the idea that they had this fighting force of like supremely powerful immortal soldiers, the God's Knights, was rather surprising. I know, it was surprising to us as well. And so, yeah, Shanks says, oh yeah, those guys consider them divine. They kind of keep clear of our world for the most part. So, you know, it is sort of a thing, like, how come none of the God's Knights were ever mentioned or were ever shown in the story up until now, like 1,000+ chapters, right? And it was even mentioned when Garling discovered God Valley. He said that he was on a mission somewhere else in the lower realm. So the God's Knights do occasionally go down to the lower realm. And I don't know, man. It's just like, remember the Gorosei really wanted the Sun God fruit, right? Like, they really wanted that fruit. They sent Cypherpool 9 after it. They failed. Who's Who failed. They couldn't get the fruit. I mean, like, the God's Knights are right here, dude, and they're also, like, a super secret clandestine operation that nobody really knows about. So, like, at a certain point, especially when Luffy is a well-known pirate with, like, you know, let's say back when he had his 30 million berry bounty, or 100 million, right after he defeated Crocodile, you feel like at that point there'd be like, this Straw Hat kid, who has the Will of D, also has the Sun God fruit. I want this kid dead. You know, send a God's Knight after him, send Garling or somebody after him, or Summers or Killingham. And I think it really just comes down to the fact that, like, if the Straw Hats were to have run into, like, Killingham, like, post-Alabasta, they would have just died. They would have gotten wrecked. There was nothing they could have done. They didn't know hockey at that point. They didn't know anything. There's no way they're winning at that point. And so it's like, yeah, well, you know, the government had other stuff going on at the time, I suppose, right? Okay. Shanks says, you know, all this stuff is going on, but meanwhile, my life is always giving me chills. The idea that what I am and who I'm, like, the son of and where my birthright is and everything like that, this keeps leading to ridiculous things. Like, the more Shanks finds out about his life, the more about, like, Emu and the God's Knights and what the government really is and the curse marks and whatever, the contracts and everything. He's learning more and more about this. He's like, this is giving me chills. And Gabon just simply responds with, you can call that fate, Shanks. That's fate. It's like, great. Great, Gabon. That's awesome. Very poetic. Yeah, all right. So Shanks' messed up life, and he's just like, yeah, it's fate. I'm like, I guess it would be. That is fate. That was very serious, and he focused on that one panel, so that might come back to be something there on Shanks' ultimate fate on where he's going to end up in the story, right? But also, Shanks told Gabon all about the contract seals. So Gabon knew how to fight the God's Knights, but he didn't know, like, where their immortality came from or how, like, the different packages, like the bronze, silver, gold package worked or the abyss or anything like that. He just knew that, like, some really powerful God's Knights tried to get back Shanks at certain points, and he cut them all down. Also, it seems like Shanks didn't remember that all too much, so maybe most of the God's Knights were coming after them when Shanks was, like, a baby. Maybe they did just give up after a while. I don't know. Because Shanks seems to not remember it. Let's see. We cut back now to Loki, and he's just like, all right, come on, Hammer. Just move out of the way. I gotta eat this devil fruit. My dad is slaughtering everybody in the other room. Come on, Hammer. Like, Loki's trying to use a persuasion roll here. Just like, 3. Shit. All right, here we go. So Ragnir flips up and goes to attack Loki, but Loki also has his own hammer. He doesn't name it, but he's just like, I have my own hammer! Ah! And he bashes his hammer into Ragnir, and Loki's hammer just shatters apart into, like, thousands of pieces. Just boom! Shatters like glass, okay? And it lands all over the arena, blasts it right off of the shaft of the sledgehammer, and he's just like, oh, damn it, my hammer! Come on! You know? The other hammer, the Ragnir, falls, and then, you're gonna have to bear with me here, turns into a squirrel. Yeah, like a squirrel. Not like a badass monster squirrel or like an anime squirrel. Just a squirrel with a hammer for a head. I mean, you see its actual head, and the hammer is like on top of its head, right? It's got, you know, the whiskers and the teeth and the bushy tail. Now, you might just think this is the most random thing ever, and it is. But anybody that knows about Norse mythology knows exactly who that squirrel is. It's Ratatoskr! You know Ratatoskr, right? Yes, I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Alright, so when we're talking about Yggdrasil, we're talking about the World Tree. I've mentioned before, there's an eagle at the top of the World Tree, whose name I always cannot remember. But at the bottom, gnawing on the roots of Yggdrasil, is the Needhog, alright? Well, and there's also, like, I think on the 4 different quadrants of the tree, there's, like, different, like, stags, you know, like big bucks that are, like, hanging out on all 4 of the branches. But there is another animal that calls the Yggdrasil its home, and that is Ratatoskr, who is a squirrel that travels from the bottom of Yggdrasil to the top, delivering messages from the Needhog up to the eagle. So this is basically like the Hermes, or, you know, the messenger deity of Norse mythology as far as the Yggdrasil tree is concerned, right? And that is Ratatoskr. And in certain depictions, originally I think Ratatoskr was mentioned in the Poetic Edda. In later depictions in like the 16th, 17th century, the squirrel is depicted as having like a horn, like a unicorn horn sticking out of its head, okay? And so I think that is the reference to the hammerhead, all right? So Oda's like, oh, instead of, you know, a big horn sticking out like a tusk. And so in this case, replace the tusk with a hammer. So anyway, Ragnir falls, turns into a squirrel, and looks rather dazed. Like you see a bump on its head from when Loki took his own hammer and slammed into Ragnir really hard. So that did phase the hammer, all right? And so the squirrel gets really dazed and then starts turning angry and is just like, gee! you know, and just like, you know, goes after Loki again. So now we cut back over to Shanks and Harald and Gabon. And so Shanks is like, okay, how do we end this? I mean, I've been using Conqueror's hockey out the ass, but how does this work? I mean, he's not slowing down, Gabon. And Gabon's like, yeah, that's a bit of a pickle. You know, I never actually thought what was going to happen if they had as much Conqueror's hockey as we did. Well, I guess we just keep hitting them really hard and hope something happens. I'm all out of ideas, Shanks. You know, that's the best idea I guess they had. I mean, there's nothing else really going on here, right? We will see a crucial weakness of the Gods Knights. And I like it because it is a weakness, but it is not a weakness that can be like overly exploited. It's not like there's their weak point, just hit them here and they explode or anything like that. It is a weakness though, okay? And I like that, all right? So I hate it. There's a trope when you introduce like a really strong character or group of characters or an ability in manga or anime, and it's like, oh my god, they're so powerful, you can't possibly hope to defeat them. And then later on you find out that like, oh yeah, you can beat them, you just need to use this magic dagger and stab them once and they die. Oh, okay, because that's just like all of that threat and danger they posed is now just thrown out the window because you can just like, you know, so there it is. But anyway, it's not that. It's not that. So Jarl is on the ground, still bleeding out, but he's still conscious. Thank God he had his helmet on. All right. So he's like, soldiers, stop Harald, please. We can't allow him to get that devil fruit at all costs. We must stop him. And so, oh my god, it's an absolute massacre. Remember, there's like 113 guards that died in the castle this day. We just see guards flying up, missing arms and legs, just completely mutilated, just getting tossed around like rag dolls, right? And Harald is there, stabbed with a bunch of swords and spears. He's holding an axe in one hand, a spear in the other. He's just a maelstrom. He's just hacking people apart left and right, okay? Now, we get to the next part of the chapter. There is no dialogue here, okay? We see the fight between the Squirrel and Loki has ended. A battle for the ages. We see one panel where the Squirrel is sort of like bowing its head in like acceptance and like reverence. Sort of like, I have lost, and now you may consume the legendary devil fruit. Choo! You know, and it's like, so the Squirrel is like bowing to Loki. Loki takes the devil fruit out of the box. We actually see it. The devil fruit, if I'm looking at this properly, is actually the size of, well, keep in mind, Loki is an ancient giant, so he's bigger than a normal giant. So in Loki's hand, the devil fruit is like the size of like a ping pong ball. Like, it's tiny, all right? It's not like an actual size, like, fruit that he consumes, all right? It seems to be like a tiny devil fruit, which I never even considered that up until now. The fact that, yeah, they're giants, I don't think that would change the size of the devil fruit, because we've never seen a huge devil fruit, right? We've never seen a devil fruit like the size of a truck or anything like that. It seems like the devil fruits are always a universal size. Some of them are bigger than others, but, like, you know, the smallest one might be like the size of an apple, or, oh no, the smallest devil fruit might actually be the love fruit. It might actually be Hancock's. She has like the love fruit, and it's like a pair of cherries. You know, those might be like the smallest devil fruits. And then we see larger ones that are shaped like gourds and things like that. Like Moria is like a husk of corn. It's like pretty big, right? So anyway, the tiny little devil fruit, we really can't make it out. It kind of looks like a little star shape. Maybe it's in the shape of the animal he turns into, which we'll get to that in a moment. But anyway, he takes out the devil fruit. He eats it. We see one panel of him like grimacing because he's like, ah, this tastes awful, which all devil fruits taste awful. And then we see his hand, his gloved hand, turning into a silhouetted claw. Just like long nails, like wolves, or maybe perhaps a Fenrir. Just, and then we see his hair growing, and then just in the shadow of the, like they're in the throne room, right? All the guards are fighting and all that, and then you just see a big blanket of shadows emerging from the treasure room with a pair of eyes, like Emu, kind of, very similar to that. And then you just hear a big roar, Elbaf, you know, coming out of the room, and everybody immediately is freaking out, except for Ratatoskr, except for Ragnir. The Squirrel is just like, choo, squee, squee. Like, he's like so happy. He's like, little hearts are popping around him. Is like, that poor squirrel was in that room for like at least 800 years, guarding a box, and now finally gets to leave. And now that's how Ragnir and Loki became best friends. Isn't that great? That's awesome. We see a scene in the big hall of a shadowy figure of legs moving across the hallways. That's what I mean. I think Loki had to run down like a different hallway in order to get here. So he's huge now, way bigger than Harald, way bigger than an ancient giant. He's hauling ass down this hallway back to the throne room, right? And then we get this double page spread. Once again, Oda does an impeccable job here of not exactly showing us what Loki looks like, but giving us the weight and the power of what this devil fruit is, right? So you see a scene of Harald in the throne room, fire everywhere, the whole place is burning down, and he's just like stabbing, like impaling a soldier, and then you just see it from his perspective as he turns, and he's like, Loki, did you eat the devil fruit? Loki doesn't respond. And so Harald just immediately launches in to attack his son. He's like, show me the power it gave you, Loki! Show me! And he just like charges. One swipe from Loki, just... We don't see Loki. We don't see what he looks like. The swipe knocks Harald back. He gets back up. His body is mangled. His arm, the slash marks go from here all the way to here, completely mutilated his arm. All right, now he's healing, but like, it's just one slash, one attack from Loki would just like instant kill Harald if he did not have the if he did not have the contract power, all right? And just like half of his face is like his eye, this whole area here is just gone from the slash, from one slash, all right? And so you just then proceed to see Loki just wailing on Harald, just rah, 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 and like his face is getting shredded, his body is getting shredded, and it's beginning to heal, but it's like the damage is happening way too fast. And then you just see a silhouette of Loki's monster form, and we don't see the whole image, but behold my great art. This is Loki, ladies and gentlemen. We have like a fox or perhaps a wolf kind of figure, horns sticking out of his head, so maybe this was his hybrid form, not his full animal form. This is an arm. This is an arm. He's actually like holding Harald up, like in this scene of just, you know, and so that's that there. That's the rest of his body that goes down further. So there you go. That's Loki now. There you go. So we're going to see the full form of this later on, but the general idea is that it is Fenrir, okay? The wolf, the son of Loki, the child of Loki in Norse mythology. Read it now, everybody. On sale now, Norse mythology. Poetic and prose Edda. Okay, so yeah. The idea of a legendary Fenrir zone, and then also I guess we have Ratatotsker, who is another legendary or mythical zone that has the power of a hammer, or the hammer that has the power of Ratatotsker. All I can say is this. I am so glad Oda didn't name these, because we can assume, but we don't know. I am so glad Oda didn't name these, because I'm doing this Zoan Devil Fruit series right now, and I'm almost done. I got like 5 videos left. No, 4. I got 4 videos left in that Zoan series, right? And this is the last chapter we're gonna get until like mid-January, all right? So, I don't know, the Ratatotsker thing, I think I'm just gonna hold off on that until we know the names of these Devil Fruits. We don't know the names yet, and we certainly don't know what Loki's is yet, all right? We can make inferences, but that's it, all right? So, thank God, I'll be able to finish out 2025 by doing all of the named Zoan Devil Fruits. I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be all right. Okay, so after just like grabbing him and like holding him up and just Loki turns back into who he is, like his human form, his giant form. He shrinks back down, and you see Loki there. And so Harald now begins to like have his own like sense of self back. He begins speaking to Loki like he used to. It's a trick, Loki! Actually, no, it's not. But that would be crazy. That would be actually a really manipulative thing that a God's Knight could do. It'd be like, Loki, my son, thank you. You have shredded me to an inch of death, and now you have destroyed the evil power of Emu. Ah! You know, and like attack him with his back's turned or something. No, but he doesn't do that. So he's like there, and he's just like, I knew it, Loki. I always knew you had the blood of the Conqueror flowing inside of you. So confirming Loki has Conqueror's Haki and then also is the chosen one to wield the legendary Devil Fruit and Ragnir. He gets a 2-for-1, right? And so Loki's like, well, wait a minute, are you back to your senses? Maybe everything's gonna be okay then. And Harald's like, no, it won't last. Don't drop your guard now, son. I want you still have to finish me off, right? Look around you. I'm beyond redemption anyway. I sliced them all apart. And Loki's like, well, you didn't mean to do that. It was like you were being brainwashed or something, right? And Harald's like, no, I still remember what I did. Like it's not hazy. Like I remember what I did, clear as day. It's just that thing was influencing my thoughts. I mean, yeah, that is still a version of brainwashing. It isn't like he's like, what? He just comes out of a haze and he's like, oh my God, did I do this? No, he remembers everything. It's just that, like, this mark was influencing his thoughts at the time. In the absolute melee, in the brutality that Loki just unleashed on Harald, he ripped apart his arm that has the contract on it. Now, the arm is beginning to heal. It's not gone forever. It's coming back. But temporarily severing that arm, cutting it off, does remove Emu's influence. It's not permanent because it's just going to come right back, but it does stall it out, which is what I like. Also a good reason why Shanks did not receive the silver package, because he was able to get his arm severed by the Lord of the Coast, which allowed the mark to be removed, and it doesn't come back because he didn't have the upgraded form of it, okay? Now, what would be crazy is if Shanks ever gets in the presence of Emu, and maybe when he's in the presence, maybe Emu can make the mark reforge, like reforge his arm, and then we do get evil Shanks. Who knows? We'll see how that goes, right? But anyway, so he starts to say, like, I considered myself a god when I had that power, Loki. It was a feeling that came over me. I need you to finish me off. You have what it takes to lead Elbaf well, my son. But maybe be a little nicer to your brother, though. That's like literally like Harald's, like, one of his last words. Like, maybe you could get along with Hyrudin a little bit better. I mean, come on now, you know. And we have Shanks and Gabon on the floor. Gabon and Gabon and Jarl. It's so confusing, Jarl and Harald. They sound so similar. Anyway, they're resting on the ground. Shanks is crying. Shanks is, like, bawling because he knows what's going to happen next, right? And so, you know, there's like having your own son take your life. What kind of father does that? What is this? And so Harald does say his last words here to Loki. Harald is like, oh, one last thing, Loki, before I completely go away to the dark side again. I wanted to thank you about Ida. The way you burned down that entire village really showed that you loved her. Okay, it's a little bit of a messed up thing to say, though, you know, they were assholes at the alcohol village, right? I don't know if every single citizen there deserved to be burned to death, but I doubt that. But there was a group there that did murder Ida. But the way that Harald says it is just like, burning down that village didn't make her better, but you did it because you showed you cared, and that meant a lot to me. It's the thought that counts, I guess. You know, I was touched about how much you love her, and at that moment, you see the contract begin to heal completely. And remember, when Loki was just shredding Harald there, you got a guarantee he was using not just a mythical zone, but he was using Conqueror's Haki while attacking Harald. So even with the mythical zone and with Conqueror's Haki, Harald himself even says you have the blood of a conqueror, right? Doing all of that, the regeneration still occurs. It did not completely stop the regeneration. It still happens. It just takes a little longer. And not even that long. Like, this conversation between Loki and Harald might take like a minute or two. So yeah, you bought a minute or two using this power. That's the weakness. But also you got to remember, yes, Roger and Garp were able to team up and fight against Rox, but they were trying to kill him. So it's almost like, yeah, you can remove the influence of Emu, but it's almost like you can remove it and kill them so they can't hurt anybody anymore, but removing the contract permanently so they return back to the way they are, that doesn't seem like anything anybody can do. It doesn't matter if you're Roger or if you're Garp or if you're Shanks or if you're Gabon or if you're Loki with a mythical zone all roided out with Fenrir power, okay? The only individual that might be able to do that is Luffy with his sun god powers. He might be able to do the reversey of the reversey and turn everybody back into the way they were, or turn them into like the sun god variant, you know, where they're, you know, all like deities and stuff like that. Maybe he could do that, right? But yeah, it's like, I don't really consider this a win. I don't consider this like, oh, all you got to do is hit him with Conqueror's Haki. Yeah, if you want to kill them, but I don't think they, like the Straw Hats want to kill Dory and Bragi. Or, heaven forbid, if one of the Straw Hats, like if Nami ends up getting Domi reversied or something like that, they're not going to want to just like, oh, okay, well, we got to murder Nami now. It's just like that. They're not going to do that. So there has to be another way to do this, okay? Well, anyway, that's his last words to Loki as he says, you know, thank you, it touched me that I know you loved Ida like your mother, even though she wasn't, you know. You hear a thud as the contract seal reforms, and he's like, hurry up, it's taking over, you gotta do it now, Loki. And Loki's like, I'll never forgive you, Dad, for making me do this! And then Harald is like, I love you too, son. I love you too. Last scene of the chapter, giant epic lightning bolt of the gods strikes West Castle, and then you see Loki swinging Ragnir sideways, slamming into Harald, and then Harald's entire body shattering apart like it was made of crystal or glass. It's just, you know, just completely rent asunder by the sheer force of the lightning strike, okay? Loki is crying. He sees a flashback of Harald in his younger years holding a baby Loki, like, Loki, my beloved son! And then we see Harald falling and dying, and we see Loki, my dear son, the only thing that really matters is securing Elbaf's future. One of the words that he had with Loki in the last chapter when he was going over, like, you need to eat the fruit, you need to secure Elbaf's future. We see Harald die, we see Loki cry, and we see the children of Elbaf dancing, and I don't know if this is taking place presently at that moment or in the future. I'm assuming this is taking place concurrently, and they're like the kids at the school are like having no idea what's going on here. They're just like, yay, let's go play Foursquare, everybody. Let's play Viking Foursquare, you know? And so that's it. That's the end of the chapter. That's the last chapter of 2025. Technically, not the last official chapter of 2025. That was last one. So this chapter is not going to officially drop until like mid-January, and we won't get the next chapter for a while. So just keep that in mind. But we'll eventually get there. And yeah, in the meantime, I got to finish up all these Devil Fruit videos. But let me know how you feel about the end of this. I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't really think there's much else to show. I mean, like, the next chapter might be, like, half-chapter flashback, and then we transition back to the present. I think that might be the best way to do it, because, honestly, at this point, I really don't want to see... I mean, like, yeah, there are stuff about Loki's past that we don't know, like Loki's journey in the Grand Line, the whole thing with Lola, and then meeting Shanks again. And, like, by the way, yeah, what happened here? Because, like, Loki killed his dad, but, like, Shanks and Gabon and Jarl were right there. They were witnesses to all this. Like I said, Gabon did not be... If he didn't tell the truth, he was kind of like lying by omission a little bit when he was talking to Hyrudin and stuff, right? When Hyrudin was going over all these things about, like, you know, oh, Loki murdered all these guards and he killed his own father, Gabon. What are you talking about letting him go? And Gabon's like, yeah, I know that, Hyrudin, but, you know... maybe we missed something. There was something going on there or something like that. I think the official translation has it worded a little bit differently, but still, he's not telling Hyrudin the whole story, which I understand, because telling Hyrudin, like, oh, you don't understand, Hyrudin. Your dad got turned evil by the evil Shadow Lord of the government, and Loki had to eat the mythical zone and put him down. Your dad was the one that actually slaughtered all 113 guards and planted a sword through Jarl's face. Maybe at that moment... maybe not the best time to tell Hyrudin that, especially with everything happening up above in the Sun Realm. So I understand, but like Loki was branded an enemy after this, right? Like the whole country hated him after this. All it would have taken was Scopper and Shanks to be like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is what happened, right? So maybe Loki made that decision himself. Maybe Loki was like, hey, Gabon, Shanks, you don't tell a soul about what happened here today, about what actually happened. If the people want to think I murdered my dad, go ahead and think it, because I basically did, and I'm gonna leave. And so Loki scampers off, and then eventually Shanks runs into him again and brings him back to Elbaf, but they're not on bad terms here, so I don't know how this goes. You know what? Actually, Wind that back. I said maybe the next chapter could go back to the present. No. We need another chapter to explain this shit. We need another chapter to explain how the hell this went down, all right? How did, Loki leave? How come the whole country doesn't... By the way, these were Harald's last words. Harald's last words were, tell the people that I was the bad guy and Loki's the king. They did the exact opposite. Now, maybe it was Loki's decision, but then again, what is going through Loki's mind here? Loki is like, he wipes out his dad, he kills his dad, and he's like, my dad's last words were for me to be the king. Shanks, don't tell anybody about what happened here. I'm leaving. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any damn sense. So something else has to be going on here. Jarl has a sword in his head. I can understand if maybe he has a little bit of memory loss, okay? If the guards show up and like, Elder Jarl, oh my God, what happened? Thank God you were wearing your helmet. Oh, yeah, this old thing, yeah. Well, it was crazy. What happened again? I know... Okay, hold on a minute. I know Harald was involved. And, oh man, there's a lot of blood around here. Loki showed up with a hammer and, hit Harald and I think killed him. Maybe that was all he remembers from that. But what about Gaban? What about Shanks? Shanks leaves, but Gaban lives here with his hot giant wife. Did he tell Ripley about what actually happened, or did he just keep it a secret? I'm confused. This needs to be explained, all right? Anyway, that'll be the next chapter in 2026. See you back here in the review stage next time, where I think we'll be ending out Elbaf this year. And then after that, Oda mentioned at Jump Festa, we're going to a place that only the Pirate King has been. You might think it's Laugh-Tale. I think it's Lodestar. We gotta have that Lodestar arc. Alright, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Techie 101 signing out. Ah, what the hell. One more for the end. Elbaf! Squirrel!